Hey there, good morning, and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph, and I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock, hard rock, heavy metal, and other forms of rock music. So today, today we're doing our series of rock musicians who thrilled us but have since passed on. This is episode 24 from 1987. So I've chosen two people today, of course, as I always do. We choose two people, and I made a list of honorable mentions. So I just want to make sure I got these in order. Okay, so the first person originally wasn't somebody I put in, but I couldn't see how you couldn't put him in. Since how I'm a drummer, you can't really pass on this one. So I chose Buddy Rich as my first one, even though he's not really a rock musician, but obviously he's had huge influence on a lot of rock drummers, including my favorite, Neil Peart. So today we're doing Buddy Rich, and the other person we're going to be doing is Peter Tosh, who's one of my favorite reggae artists. I'm not a huge reggae fan, but I do like certain people, and he's probably my favorite. Okay, so we'll start off with Buddy Rich. First, the vitals on him. He was born September 30th, 1917 in New York City, Brooklyn to be specific. He died April 2nd, I almost said April 12th, April 2nd, 1987. He was 69 years of age, and he died in Los Angeles, California. And I believe, even though I couldn't really, they really didn't say specifically, but it appears he died of a stroke. Okay. Not right away. He had the stroke, and then he went on for a bit before he passed away. His music obviously was jazz and big band and swing music. That was the music of his time period. Basically, he was a drummer. That's what he was. But that's not to limit his ability. He was quite the drummer, really. He was. Now, I've seen people getting in arguments on the internet over who's the best drummer in the world. I mean, certainly he's among the best drummers in the world, if not the best drummer in the world, but people will cite because, well, look at him, look at how fast he was and all this stuff, and he didn't need a million drums, he was good with just a few. Well, just because a person has just a few drums and another guy has 25 or 30 drums doesn't necessarily mean the guy with 25 or 30 drums is better or the guy with less is better. Some people like a lot of drums, some don't. So I don't think that has any argument on drum ability at all. Anyways, he was active from 1921 to 1987. Well, if he was active in 1921, that meant he was 4. So basically what happened was his parents, Bess Skolnick, I hope I pronounced that right, and his father, Robert Rich, were both vaudeville performers, and they brought him into the act and when he was about 2, and then when the act was over, he would sometimes try to sneak into where the band was and play on the drums. And so he became a drummer at a very young age, and a damn good one too. So early on, of course, he would sneak into clubs and perform with bands and playing the drums and stuff like that at a younger age when he could get away with it. When he was in his early teens, he formed a band, and they toured the United States, and I think if maybe I'm mistaken here, but I think he also toured Australia. Am I wrong? I don't know. Anyways, so at a very young age, and he was in charge of the band, the main guy. So there you go. Maybe 12 or 13 years of age, he's already doing this stuff. At 15 years of age, he was considered the second highest paid child entertainer next to Jerry. Who was it? I'm drawing a blank here. Behind Jackie Coogan. I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking of Gene Krupa for some reason, and I know that wasn't the case. He played pretty much in the Tommy Dorsett band initially, playing in 1939 to 42, 45, and then again in 54 to 54 to 55. And of course, in that time period, many of the musicians played with a lot of different bands all at the same time, and he was one of these people who played drums with just about everybody. And then he played, people used to think of him, I think of him as being somewhat of a centerpiece, flamboyant type of drummer. But he did play Ella Fitzgerald and a few other people where he wasn't as flamboyant, it wasn't required, so he played the backdrop, which was good. It's good that he was flexible to do that. And I think any really good drummer is flexible to do all these things. I often smirk when I hear people say, oh, well, this drummer couldn't play with that band because his style doesn't fit it, or that drummer could never play with that drum, he's not good enough, or whatever, right? A lot of these really good drummers will fit themselves to whatever the music there is they're playing. Good ones will anyways. The ones who can't do that aren't really good ones anyways, but for the most part, the good ones can adjust themselves to just about any situation because they're good, right? It's not always their preference to play that way. They prefer a certain style. They have their own style. But sometimes it's not called for on a certain type of music, so they adjust themselves to it. That's just the way it is. And I think Buddy Rich was as gifted at this particular thing as anybody, right? So like I said, he played with lots of different bands over the course of his career, which was predominantly jazz music, and he was a jazz drummer, and I think he was the most incredibly fast drummer I've ever seen. His hands were like a lightning bolts, right? Just an amazing drummer that way. He was a lifelong friend of Johnny Carson, the Tonight Show host, legend, icon, whatever you want to call him. They were lifelong friends. Johnny Carson, of course, had a huge love for the drums, and Buddy Rich was the best drummer out there at the time, at least in the type of music that Johnny Carson would listen to. So, what else? He was influenced by, he lists his influences anyways, as Gene Krupa, Joe Jones, Chuck Webb, Ray McKinley, Ray Boddock, and of course, Sel Catlett. So these were the drummers that influenced his style, and he in turn influenced a lot of drummers. And part of the reason I chose him for this is because he influenced many rock drummers, including my favorite particular drummer, Neil Peart. So I wanted to include him. So he influenced Peart, who has influenced me. So that's how it goes, downhill, and everybody learns, right? He was a huge advocate of the traditional grip, but would use the match grip as well for playing the toms. The interesting part is, and this is really not really as uncommon as people think, he couldn't read music and often had other drummers in there to read the music for him so he could play. And, he wasn't able to read music, and this isn't really uncommon. A lot of musicians, at least rock musicians of the modern era, never learned to read music as well and just played by ear pretty much. When you don't have a lot of money in your childhood and stuff to get lessons and be taught these things, it's often difficult to learn to read this stuff without having been schooled. Excuse me. Anyways, he married Marie Allison on April 24th, 1953, and he stayed with her until his death in 1987. He did have a short temper. This is nothing new. I mean, he was actually a lot of drummers like this, but he had a short fuse and had arguments with people all the time, and often with Frank Sinatra in particular, they would end up in a brawl. I can't imagine getting in a fist fight between Frank Sinatra and Buddy Rich, though. It seems a little bit stretching it to me, but they say it happened, so it did. Anyway, so there you have the kind of brief history of Buddy Rich, I could have gone on for hours about this because he had so much involvement. I think he wrote the score, a lot of the music for, well, I don't know if he wrote the music so much as he played the music for the West Side Story. And he's done lots of stuff, right? It's all, you know, if you want to read, you could spend days reading about his exploits and his musical. The man was a legend, you know. Legend while he was alive, and even more so now that he's gone. Been gone for a long time too. But the biggest thing about him, and I'm a drummer myself. Well, I can play the drums, although some people might say I'm just a noisemaker. And I'm not going to argue with either sides of that coin. I like to play the drums. I've played the drums. I've been trying to learn to play guitar too, but I seem to have an instinct for the drums. So always listening for different stuff. And he was very fast. His hands were very fast. He knew how to play the cymbals very well as well. I mean, he was not weak in any aspect of the drumming at all, but he had, like most drummers, some areas he was much stronger in, and his fast hands were that. Once asked if how he felt about drummers playing the drums with their actual hands, and he said it's kind of a stupid thing to do because you injure your hands, which are your livelihood. You know, pretty exact statement, I think. Common sense, you know. Anyway, so there you have it. Buddy Rich, a guy who I've always appreciated his drum ability. I've never been a huge jazz fan, although, you know, I've begun to show some interest in this field the last year or so, and also in jazz fusion. One of the shows I watch, or one of the sites that I follow, they just started a new jazz fusion kind of monthly show. So I watched the inaugural one today, and it was really quite good and informative. The three guys on it really know what they're talking about, and you know, so they're launching me into another musical genre. I don't know if it'll turn up on my channel here, but certainly I will enjoy it if nothing else. And so there you have it, Buddy Rich, one of the great drummers of the history of music in general, jazz music specifically. Huge influence on a lot of rock drummers as well. So the number two guy I know a little bit more about because I listened to his music when I was younger. I had a period of time in my roommate Mark, his mother was a huge reggae lover of reggae music and the whole Rastafari kind of subgenre, if you want. And so there was a lot of that being played around that time period. So I'm going to say between the end of my living at home, so maybe from about 86, no, before that, about 83, 84 through to about 87, I listened to a fair bit of reggae music. And I since moved to listen to other stuff, so I haven't been listening to it as much, but my favorite of those reggae artists was Peter Tosh. He was a political, he wrote a lot of political music. He was anti-apartheid. He was a voice for change, is what he was. And you know, he took heat for this, beaten a couple times, at least one time anyways. The police came and got him and beat him pretty severely. Unfortunately, that was more common in that time period and seems to be still going on today, unfortunately. That's just terrible. But anyways, he was a great musician, I think. Of the reggae artists, at least of the Wailers, he was the instrumentalist, the one with the musical talent. He was gifted musically and had the ability to learn by watching, and mastered quite a few instruments, I think, from more than I would have thought from not having had any formal education in it. He once said that he watched a guy playing a song and playing the guitar and singing the song. He watched them for half a day, and then he memorized what the guy did, what he sang, and memorized how he played the guitar, and then he played it back to him, and the guy says, "Oh, where did you learn to play that?" And he says, "From you. I watched you today." The guy must have been floored by that. Either I'm really bad and somebody can pick it up in a few hours, or this guy's gifted. I think it was probably more likely the latter than the former. So anyways, Peter Tosh, we're going to talk about him now. Born Winston Hubert McIntosh, changed his name to Peter Tosh once he was with the Wailers. Born on April 19th, 1944 in Grange Hill, Jamaica, which is in Westmoreland. Died September the 11th, 1987 at the age of 42 in Kingston, Jamaica. And unfortunately, his death was a violent one. Gunmen broke into his house, demanded money, and then beat him and tortured him. And then when other people showed up, they went ballistic and started shooting and shot him twice in the head and killed him. Sad way to go for such a gifted musician. A loss for a lot of people here. His music, reggae, ska, rocksteady, and R&B. The R&B, I think, came more later in his career once he got kind of a mainstream type of rock stuff going on. He was a vocalist, and he also played guitar, keyboards, I can never pronounce this word, maybe I should read my own handwriting, it would be easier. Melodica, which I believe is correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a handheld keyboard. The strap, whatever, and you play the keyboards on your hand. That's what I think it is, and I didn't look it up, but I think that's what it is. And percussion and drums and violin as well. So he played a lot of stuff, and I think he played them all fairly good too. He is years active, 1961 to 1987. So when he was 15, I think it was when he was 15, his mother died, and he moved to live with his other relatives on the other side of the island. So, again, he's a self-taught musician. He played with the Wailers. Bunny Wailer, Bob Marley, and him formed that band with some other people. And if you want to know more about that, you can go see my Bob Marley video. Anyways, I'm not going to talk too much about the Wailers. I'm here mostly to talk about Peter Tosh, and I think the Peter Tosh that I like was better on his own after the Wailers did a lot of good stuff after that, and I think it's a lot of stuff that really he never got kind of promoted well enough. Like, he didn't get the kind of promotion that record labels should give their top acts. But at that time, Bob Marley was the bigger of the two, probably still is, but my way of thinking, Peter Tosh is the better of the two, and instrumentally anyways, and better songwriter, and just an all-around better stage presence. That's just my opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean, and don't quote me on this, that I think Peter Tosh is better than Bob Marley. I like Peter Tosh better. It doesn't mean that he's better than Bob Marley. Okay, so he went solo in 73 and had written a lot of the Wailer hits, of course. I already said that. He was signed to the Rolling Stone record label, and they released his first solo album, which was Bush Doctor. He worked with Keith Richards and Mick Jagger on one of the songs. That was a Temptation song that they re-recorded called Don't Look Back. And him and Mick Jagger did a kind of duet on this song. So that's his connection with rock music. But I think he did a lot of really good stuff. He released albums, The Mystic Man, and then Wanted, Dread, or Alive, and then later produced some other albums as well. He did produce a kind of support of the anti-apartheid movement, tried to get his music not released in South Africa, as he was trying not to try to support the anti-apartheid movement, which I think is, that's the way he is. He's very political, outspoken, and when you're like that, people are not going to like it, and he was beaten by the police on a couple of occasions, at least one occasion that has been documented that I know of, and beaten fairly severely, but he still spoke the truth, at least the truth as he believed it. And then he, of course, as we said, died at the hand of gunmen who tried to rob him and ended up killing him on September the 11th of 1987. But his music in general was really good. I really think it was more instrumentally and musically diverse than any stuff that I have heard in this genre. He had a good voice too. I quite like him. I'm kind of saddened that he died at such a young age. I mean, he could have released so much more stuff, but this is where these musicians go. They just start to really make an impact, and then they're gone like that, gone, unfortunately. But it's the world in which we live in. So, anyways, I'm in Neon, but still a little bit tired. Had a long one last night. Anyways, I just want to thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. I'm just going to do some honorable mentions now, because the list is growing, because unfortunately the list is growing because there's more people dying, right? So anyways, included on, I wanted to send out some kind of a, kudos to people who passed, who had influences. Tony Destra of Britney Fox and Cinderella, Norman Harris of MFSB, Mother, Sister, Father, Brother, Tony Stratton Smith of Nice and Vander Graaf, the producer of that stuff. He was one of the people I had considered doing in this, but I think you had to go with the two you did. Carlton Carly Barnett, BM and the Wailers, Bob Marley and the Wailers, of course. He was, I believe he was the drummer. I think he was the drummer. Paul Butterfield of the Butterfield Blues Band. John Gary Driscoll of Elf and Rainbow, a band I like quite a bit. Alex Sankin of the Thompson Twins, and Duran Duran. So there you have it. I tried to get a little bit of everybody in there. All these people I sent out, I wanted to honor them all by mentioning them today. And I hope you enjoyed this video on Buddy Rich and Peter Tosh, two great musicians myself, people who've had very different backgrounds and very different influences on the music, but still nevertheless had a large influence on some of the music that I listen to today. And I hope you, like I said, hope you enjoyed this, and if you did, please press like and subscribe. All this stuff helps me if you do that, and we'll be doing another video for this tomorrow. Try to get it out a bit earlier. I know I like to do them at 9. During the week I've been doing them at 9. It's harder on the weekend because I got so much to catch up on, and house cleaning and stuff like that needs to be done. And I do work 40 to 50 hours a week in a full-time job, so I try to get as much of this in as I can because I love music, and I hope you enjoyed this again. So if you did, please, like I said, subscribe and like, and make some comments about what you've heard today as well. That's always appreciated. So there you have it. So Prog Monster out. Have a good day.